She was the quiet kind, the kind who wore oversized sweaters even in summer, sat in the back of the lecture hall, and flinched every time someone raised their voice. Her name was Eleanor, 22 years old, a final-year med student with grades. That could shame the top 10, but a heart that had never been touched. Not like that. Her world was small. Study, sleep, repeat. Maybe coffee with her roommate once in a while. But boys? Nah. Her heart had learned to lock itself up tight. Ever. Since that night back home, when her drunk stepfather had looked at her for just a second too long. She never let anyone in. Not emotionally, not physically, especially not physically, until Dr. Nathan Hale walked into her clinical rotation. He wasn't old, not doctor old, maybe 32, 33 at most. Dark hair, scruffy beard, sleeves rolled up with just enough muscle to make her stare when she shouldn't. He had this confidence, like he owned the whole damn hospital, and somehow made chaos look elegant. Nurses flirted. Interns followed him like puppies. But Elena, she kept her head down. Tried to. He noticed her anyway. "You're sharp," he said one evening during rounds, eyes locking onto hers like they could read every secret she'd buried. Deep. "But you overthink. Relax into your instincts." No one had ever told her that. That night, she couldn't sleep. She stared at her ceiling and wondered what it would be like to be touched by hands that weren't rough or angry. What it would be like to want it. The weeks passed. His compliments grew quieter, more personal. He'd linger at her side when no one else was around. Once, she caught him watching her, not like a teacher, but like a man. It made her skin burn, and heart race all at once. One rainy night, after a 16-hour shift, they were the last two in the locker room hallway. She was drained, her scrubs clinging to her skin, hair a mess, eyes tired. He looked at her like she was the most beautiful woman in the world. "You okay?" he asked. She nodded. "Just tired." He stepped closer. Too close. Close enough to smell. His cologne, something subtle and sinful. "You know, you don't always have to carry everything alone." That's when it happened. The kiss. Gentle at first. She didn't even know how to respond. She just stood there, shaking, heart thundering, until her lips moved on their own. He pulled back, breathless. "Come with me." And she did. Back to his apartment. Small, clean, sterile like him, but still warm. She told him the truth while standing at the edge of his bed. "I've never done this before." He froze. "You mean?" She nodded, arms wrapped around herself. His eyes softened. "You don't have to prove anything. I want to." Her voice was barely a whisper. "With you." What followed wasn't pornographic. It wasn't even about sex. It was about trust, surrender, and a kind of aching gentleness that almost brought her to tears. He held her like she mattered, like she wasn't broken. She left his place at 3 a.m. with shaky legs, swollen lips, and a smile she couldn't hide. For once she felt alive, but she had no idea that her real education was about to begin, and it had nothing to do with medicine. Because the next morning when she walked into the hospital, the nurses looked at her differently. Whispers followed, her through the halls, and one of them, with pity in her eyes, handed her a folded piece of paper. Scrawled in messy handwriting were the words, "You're not the first student he's done this with. Don't be the next mistake." She stared at the note for a long time. Her fingers trembled, not from fear, but from confusion, like her body. Hadn't caught up with her mind yet. The words blurred a little as she read them again and again. "You're not the first. Don't be the next mistake." Her first instinct was denial. No, Nathan wouldn't. He was gentle, he was kind. He looked into her eyes like he actually saw her. It wasn't some drunken hookup or a mistake. He made her feel chosen, safe. But the way the nurses looked at her, that was real, and they weren't cruel, just... Sorry. She shoved the note into her pocket and forced herself through the rest of her shift. Nathan wasn't on her rotation that day, a blessing or maybe a curse. She couldn't decide. Every hallway felt colder. Every patient's voice faded into background noise. Her mind was a storm. When her shift finally ended, she didn't go home. She waited. She waited in the hospital cafeteria, staring into a coffee that had long since gone cold. And when she finally saw him, walking toward the exit in his usual calm, confident stride, she stood up and called his name. He smiled, warm and casual. "Hey, you all right?" She hated how her heart still fluttered. "We need to talk." His smile faltered just a little, then returned. "Sure. My place?" "No, right here." He looked around. They were semi-alone, in a quiet corner, and the night staff were just switching over. Low risk. "Okay," he said carefully. "What's going on?" She pulled out the note and placed it on the table between them. His face didn't flinch. Not even a flicker. Of guilt or surprise, that scared her more than anything. "You're not denying it," she whispered. He leaned back in his chair, exhaled through his nose and rubbed the back of his neck. "Elena, you're not a kid. You know how the world works." Her stomach turned. "Is that supposed to mean something?" "I'm not the only doctor who's been with a student. It's not ideal, but it's not a crime. You're not some helpless girl I manipulated. You wanted it too." She stared at him, stunned. "You think that's the point?" He lowered his voice. "Look, it happened. I don't regret it. I don't think you do either. But you need to understand something. This can't go anywhere. I'm engaged." The floor beneath her felt like it cracked in two. "You're what?" she whispered, barely able to speak. "She doesn't work here. She lives in Boston. Long distance. We've been on and off for years. I thought we were done, but she's coming back next month. We're trying again." Elena's throat tightened like it was closing in on itself. "You lied to me." "No. I didn't promise you anything." "You never asked. I thought we were two adults sharing something in the moment." The way he said it, so clean, so casual, like he hadn't just taken something sacred from her and tossed it aside. "I was a virgin," she said. His jaw tightened, for the first time. "I know. That's why I was gentle. I respected you." She stood up, heart thudding in her ears. "You used me." His eyes finally looked pained. "No, Elena, I liked you. Still do. But this isn't a fairy tale. You're smart, strong. Don't let this derail you." But it already had. She walked away, straight out of the hospital, into the cold night. Rain again. Of course it was raining. It felt right. By the time she got home, she was soaked to the bone and shaking. Her roommate Maya took one look at her and dropped the glass she was holding. What the hell happened? Elena didn't answer. She couldn't. She curled up in bed that night and cried into her pillow like a child. The doctor she trusted. The man she gave herself to. He wasn't just someone's fiancé. He was a collector of secrets, and she had just become the newest one. Maya didn't push that night. She just sat beside Elena on the bed and rubbed her back like they were 12 again, and monsters still lived in closets. Elena didn't say much, just bits and pieces. The word doctor was enough to tell Maya everything she needed. The next morning, Elena woke up feeling like she hadn't slept at all. Her body still ached in places she didn't expect. Her heart felt like it had been shattered, glued back together, and then dropped again for good measure. She skipped her first rotation, then the next. By noon her phone buzzed. "Nathan, can we talk? I want to explain more, please." She stared at the message, then threw her phone across the room. She didn't respond, but he wasn't the only one watching. The next time she stepped back into the hospital, it felt different. People didn't make eye contact. Or worse, they did, just long enough to glance down at her like she was some pathetic cliché. The student who fell for the charming doctor, the girl who thought she was special. Another one in the rotation of favorites. Aunt Elena thought she could tough it out, thought she could just study harder, focus on her work, let it pass. But hospitals are like high schools with better pay. Gossip travels like wildfire, and hers had already gone up in flames. Even her supervisor, Dr. Kim, started acting different, cold, professional in a way that felt like a punishment. "You're here to learn, not to cause distractions," she said bluntly during a review session. Elena's throat went dry. She hadn't even mentioned Nathan, but the judgment was there. Later that week, Maya cornered her in the kitchen. "You need to report him." Elena didn't look up. "I can't prove anything. It wasn't illegal. Just humiliating." "You're not the only one, Elena. What if he does it again? What if he already is?" That hit harder than anything else, because she'd believed she was different. That she meant something to him. But what if she didn't? What if she was just another notch in a long, disgusting list? Later that night, Elena sat alone in the library, surrounded by textbooks she couldn't focus on. And then she saw her. A younger student, pretty, nervous, first year, sitting way too close to Nathan in the staff lounge across the glass wall. He was smiling at her. The exact same smile. Elena felt something boil inside her. Not jealousy, no, this was deeper. It was rage. She stood up, walked straight out the door. Her feet moved on instinct, like they knew what she had to do before her brain even caught. Up she went to student affairs. The administrative office felt cold, too clean, too quiet. A middle-aged woman in glasses looked up at her. "Can I help you?" Elena hesitated. Her voice shook. "I need to file a complaint against a senior doctor." The woman blinked. "Okay. Do you have a name?" Eleanor's throat was dry. Her palms were sweating. But she said it, out loud. "Nathan Hale." The woman didn't react, just nodded and began typing. "All right, we'll need you to give a statement." It took an hour. Every detail, every message, every time he touched her shoulder, every glance that lingered too long. And finally, the night she spent with him. When she left the office, her legs felt like they could barely hold her up. But something had changed. Not around her, within her. She wasn't just the girl who got used. She was the girl who wouldn't let it slide. And that made her dangerous. Days passed and the hospital buzzed with an energy Elena couldn't quite place. It was like a storm building behind closed doors, everyone pretending nothing was wrong, while waiting for the lightning to strike. Nathan didn't text again, didn't call, didn't try to corner her in the halls. That should have been a relief. It wasn't. Instead, she felt it. The slow, invisible weight pressing down on her. A few of her classmates grew colder. Teachers stopped calling on her during rounds. It wasn't obvious, not enough to complain about. But it was enough to feel. And then it happened. Late one night, after another exhausting shift, she found her locker wide open. Her backpack was unzipped, contents dumped out across the bench, her stethoscope, her notes, her tablet, everything exposed, disrespected. And taped to the inside of the locker door, scrawled in thick, ugly black letters, "Sluts don't become doctors." Her hands shook as she peeled it off. Maya's words echoed in her head. "You need to be ready. He won't just let this happen." She should have expected it. Nathan wasn't going to lose his reputation without a fight. He was fighting dirty now. That night, Elena didn't go home. She sat in her car in the parking lot, cold hands wrapped around the steering wheel, heart thudding painfully in her chest. Tears blurred her vision, but she blinked them away, furious at herself. She had given him the power. She let him inside her life, her body, her mind. But that ended now. The next morning she scheduled a meeting with Dean Wallace, the highest authority she could reach without jumping straight into a lawsuit. A stern woman with silver hair and sharp eyes, the dean listened in silence as Elena laid it all out, the relationship, the manipulation, the retaliation. When she finished, Dean Wallace sighed heavily. "You understand," she said slowly, "that this could destroy your career too, if we can't prove retaliation?" Elena nodded. Her throat was raw from holding back emotion. "I don't care anymore. I'm not letting him do this to someone else." Dean Wallace tapped her pen against the desk. "We'll investigate quietly, for your protection and his. In the meantime, keep your head down. Don't engage." Easy for her to say. That afternoon, Elena found herself paged unexpectedly. Her special assignment with a senior attending, away from her regular rotation, away from her friends. When she arrived at the exam room, she froze. Nathan was there, alone, waiting. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Elena," he said smoothly, like nothing had ever happened. "Come in." She should have turned around, walked out, reported it instantly, but something inside her snapped. She stepped in and shut the door behind her. "What do you want?" she asked coldly. Nathan leaned back against the counter, arms crossed. His posture was casual, but the tension in the room was thick enough to choke on. "You filed a complaint," he said flatly. "You think that's going to end well?" "For you?" She didn't respond. He chuckled, a low, dangerous sound. "You're naive if you think anyone's going to take your word over mine. You'll be labeled unstable, emotional. Students like you don't survive scandals, especially not ones who sleep their way into trouble." Every word was a slap, but she stood her ground. "I didn't sleep my way anywhere. I survived you." His eyes darkened. He pushed off the counter, closing the distance between them in 2 slow steps. Elena's heart pounded. She could smell his cologne again. The same cologne that once made her knees weak. Now it made her stomach turn. "You should withdraw your complaint," he said, voice low, "before this gets uglier." She looked up at him, straight into the eyes of the man she once trusted, and she smiled, because she wasn't scared anymore. "You should be careful. Dr. Hale," she whispered. "I'm not the only one talking." His jaw twitched. She opened the door without another word and walked away, leaving him standing there alone in his own rot. She didn't see it yet, but the cracks were already starting to spread, and soon Nathan Hale was going to fall. The next few days felt like living underwater, everything muffled, heavy, slow. Elena moved through her shifts like a ghost, barely speaking unless she had to, barely making eye contact. But inside, she wasn't breaking anymore. She was sharpening. Word had gotten out, quietly at first, then louder. Whispers in the stairwells, hushed conversations that stopped when she walked past. Nurses with tight smiles, residents who looked at her with something almost like respect and fear, because she wasn't the first. And now, finally, others were starting to say it out loud. It started with Emily Tran, a second year who'd rotated under Nathan last semester. She showed up outside Elena's locker one afternoon, looking pale and nervous, clutching a manila folder like it was a life raft. "I heard what you did," Emily said in a rush, glancing around to make sure no one was watching. "I'm not brave enough to go public, but I can give you this." She shoved the folder into Elena's hands and fled. Inside were screenshots, emails, messages Nathan had sent late at night, messages that started innocently, then slid into flirting, then into obvious gross propositions, proof. Elena took a breath so deep it hurt. Then she walked straight to student affairs. Again. This time Dean Wallace's face actually cracked, her mouth tightened, her hands steepled together. "This changes everything," she said grimly. An official investigation was launched the next day. Nathan was temporarily suspended pending the outcome. The notice went out in a private email to faculty and students. Short, cold, brutal. Elena read it 3 times before it sank in. He was off the floor. He wouldn't be standing at the head of her rounds anymore. He wouldn't be lurking in locker rooms or hallways or the corners of her mind. But it wasn't over. Not yet. Maya hugged her that night, tight and fierce. "You did it. You actually did it." Elena smiled for the first time in weeks. Not a full smile, a cracked one. But it was real. Still, not everyone was happy. The next morning, someone keyed Elena's car in the parking lot. Deep, ugly scratches from bumper to mirror. On her windshield, a note. "Bitches ruin good men." Maya found her standing there, staring at the vandalism. "God, they're cowards," Maya snapped. "You want me to help you report it?" Elena shook her head. "No, let them come. Let them be angry. I'm done hiding." Because the truth was stronger than threats. The truth had weight now, and soon it would have consequences. Later, that week, Dean Wallace called her in again. She sat across the big oak desk, heart steady this time. "There have been multiple reports," the dean said carefully. "Not just from you, from students over the past 2 years." Elena blinked, shocked. 2 years? "Yes," Dean Wallace said, almost reading her mind. "Many were afraid to come forward, but your case opened the door. You should be proud." Pride wasn't what Elena felt, it was rage. at herself for thinking she was alone. At Nathan for building an entire career off silence and manipulation. "What happens now?" Elena asked. Dean Wallace folded her hands. "There will be a formal hearing, a recommendation for termination, possibly even criminal charges, if certain behaviors meet thresholds." Elena swallowed hard. She hadn't thought about that. Prison. She thought she wanted revenge. Now she realized she just wanted it to stop. "I'll testify," Elena said without hesitation. Dean Wallace nodded. "You're braver than most," she said quietly. "But be prepared. He's going to fight dirty before he falls." And Nathan was already planning his next move, because men like him, they didn't lose gracefully. They dragged others down with them, and Elena had just painted a target on her back. The hospital felt different without Nathan stalking the halls, but it wasn't the kind of peace Elena had imagined. It was a vacuum, and in vacuums, bad things. Fester. She noticed it first during her evaluation meeting. Her grades, once flawless, had dropped. Her clinical assessments, once glowing, were suddenly inconsistent, emotional, lacking leadership qualities. Dean Wallace had warned her, he'll fight dirty. Nathan might have been gone physically, but his fingerprints were still everywhere. Faculty he had once charmed, students he had mentored, people who owed him favors, people who were too scared to cut him loose. They were poisoning her record from the inside, quietly, subtly. Elena sat in front of her academic advisor, heart pounding. "I don't understand," she said carefully. "There's no reason for this downgrade, none." The advisor, a gray-haired man with tired eyes, shrugged like it wasn't his problem. "Your performance has been disruptive lately. There's concern you're not focusing on your education." Disruptive. The word stung more than it should have. She wasn't disruptive when she gave her virginity to a doctor. She wasn't disruptive when she stayed quiet. Only now that she fought back, was she the problem. She left the office shaking, her academic future hanging by a thread. And that's when she got the email. No subject line, no sender name she recognized. Just a single attachment, a blurry photo. Her at Nathan's apartment, half undressed, kissing him. The timestamp was stamped across the bottom. If that photo leaked, if it got into the wrong hands, her reputation would be beyond saving. She wouldn't just lose her spot in the program. She'd be humiliated, ruined, blacklisted. Minutes later, a second email popped up. "Drop the complaint, Elena, or the whole hospital sees this." No signature, no name. But she didn't need one. Nathan had taken that photo, or had someone else take it. Either way, it was clear he was done pretending. He was going to drag her through the dirt unless she backed off. Maya found her sitting in the dark kitchen that night, staring at her laptop like it had punched her in the gut. "What's wrong?" Maya asked, voice low, scared. Elena turned the screen toward her. Maya gasped. Her hand flew to her mouth. "Oh my God, he didn't—" "He did." Elena's voice was dead flat. No fear, no tears, just rage. Maya knelt down beside her. "You have to tell the dean. Show them. You can't let him control you like this." Elena closed the laptop. Slowly. Her hands were shaking. She forced them still. "I'm not backing down," she said. "I'm not dropping anything." "But what if they believe him?" Maya whispered. "They might," Elena said. "They probably will." Maya's face twisted with helpless anger. "But it's not just about me anymore," Elena said, voice stronger now. "It's about every girl he ever did this to. Every girl who's still too scared to talk." She stood up, her decision already made. She would go back to Dean Wallace. She would hand over the email. She would let them see how far Nathan was willing to go to silence her. Because even if they tried to ruin her name, even if she lost everything she'd worked for, at least she would know she fought. At least she wouldn't be another silent name in Nathan Hale's body count. And if he wanted war, then war was exactly what he was going to get. The hearing was set for Friday morning. Hospital administration, student, affairs Dean Wallace, 2 lawyers, a panel of ethics officials who looked like they'd rather be anywhere else but here. Elena walked into the conference room wearing a plain black dress, no makeup, hair tied back, nothing to hide, nothing to prove. She wasn't here to impress anyone. She was here to survive, Nathan was already there, seated on the other side of the table, flanked by a stone-faced attorney in a sharp suit. He didn't even glance at her. Coward. Dean Wallace began the hearing with a voice as sharp as a blade. Today's matter concerns allegations of inappropriate relationships between senior staff and medical students, specifically involving Dr. Nathan Hale and Miss Elena Ramirez. Elena's throat tightened when she heard her full name. No hiding. No taking it back. Nathan's lawyer leaned forward immediately. My client categorically denies any misconduct. He states the relationship was consensual, between two consenting adults, outside the scope of any professional influence. The panel members nodded solemnly, pretending to be neutral. Elena's lawyer spoke next. She was younger, fiercer, with a voice that filled the room. There is a documented pattern of predatory behavior here. Ms. Ramirez's testimony is supported by electronic evidence, as well as corroboration from additional students. The photos, the texts, the second email, they were all printed out in thick packets, evidence heavy enough to make the table sag. Nathan still didn't look at her, but she saw the way his hands flexed and unflexed in his lap. He wasn't as calm as he wanted to seem. Then it was Elena's turn to speak. She stood up, heart hammering against her ribs, palms slick with sweat. And she told them everything, from the first compliment to the first kiss. From the night he touched her to the morning she woke up believing she mattered. The humiliation, the retaliation, the threats, the photo. When she was done, the room was silent, heavy. One of the panel members cleared her throat awkwardly. Dr. Hale, do you have anything to say? Nathan finally looked up, right at Elena. His eyes were full of a cold, hateful rage. She came onto me, he said smoothly. She's lying because she regrets it. The words sliced into her like razors, but she didn't flinch. Not even when the panel started murmuring among themselves, eyes darting between her and him, weighing her life like it was a math problem. Dean Wallace held up a hand. Silence fell again. We have received corroborating complaints from multiple students, including evidence submitted voluntarily. Dr. Hale, this is not an isolated allegation. It is a pattern. Nathan's mouth opened, then snapped shut. For the first time, real fear cracked his perfect mask. Dean Wallace continued, voice cold as ice. It is the panel's unanimous decision to terminate Dr. Hale's employment, effective immediately. Furthermore, the case will be referred to the State Medical Board for further investigation into potential license revocation. Nathan stood, up so fast his chair screeched against the floor. His lawyer grabbed his arm, trying to calm him, but Nathan was beyond that now. This is bullshit, he roared. You're ruining my life over a little slut who wanted attention. The panel gasped. Someone near the door actually stepped back. Elena didn't move, she just watched him unravel, piece by ugly piece. Security was called. Nathan was escorted out of the hospital, red-faced, shouting curses that echoed down the pristine white halls. When the door finally slammed shut behind him, Elena let out a slow, shaky breath. It was over. Or at least, he was. Dean Wallace turned to her, her sharp features softening just a little. You were brave, she said simply. You saved more people than you know. Elena nodded, but inside she didn't feel brave. She felt exhausted, hollow, but also free. As she stepped outside into the cold, bright sunlight, Maya was waiting for her, a giant grin on her face. You did it, she whispered fiercely, grabbing Elena's hand. You freaking did it. Elena smiled, small but real. For the first time in a long time, she felt the weight lift. Not completely. Scars don't heal in a day, but enough. Enough to start again. 3 months later, the hospital looked different. To Elena. Not because the walls had changed, or the staff, or the endless buzzing fluorescent lights. It was her. She had changed. The scandal had burned hot and fast. First the whispers, then the outrage, then silence. Nathan Hale's name had become a ghost, one no one dared mention anymore. Rumor had it he lost his license. Rumor had it he tried to sue the hospital for wrongful termination and got laughed out of court. Rumor had it he left town with nothing but a duffel bag and a handful of broken dreams. Eleanor didn't care anymore if the rumors were true. She had survived him. That was enough. She still had to fight. Her academic record was scarred now. Emotional instability, disruptive behavior. But Dean Wallace personally vouched for her during residency applications. Doors that had slammed shut slowly creaked open again. It wasn't fair, it wasn't clean, but it was life. One messy victory at a time. Some nights, when the apartment was quiet and Maya was asleep, Elena would sit by the window and let herself feel everything she'd bottled up. The betrayal, the shame, the rage, the fierce, stubborn pride that refused to die no matter how many times they tried to kill it. Healing wasn't pretty. It wasn't a movie montage. It was slow and painful and lonely, but it was happening. One breath at a time. One afternoon, as she was leaving the hospital, a voice called her name. Elena! She turned and saw Emily Tran jogging toward her, out of breath and smiling shyly. I matched, Emily said, practically glowing. I got my first choice residency. I just wanted to say thank you. If you hadn't spoken up, I don't know if I would have had the guts to keep going. Elena blinked hard, the sting of unexpected tears rising. She smiled, genuine and fierce. You did that, she said, not me, you. Emily hugged her briefly before running off, full of hope and new beginnings. Eleanor watched her go, a warm ache blooming in her chest. For the first time, she allowed herself to believe it. Maybe everything she endured wasn't just destruction. Maybe it was planting seeds. Maybe her scars were maps for others to follow. She turned her face up to the sun, let it soak into her skin. She wasn't the naive girl who gave away her heart to a man who didn't deserve it anymore. She wasn't the broken victim walking halls that whispered behind her back. She was something else now, stronger, wiser, sharper, and this time she wasn't giving her power away to anyone, not ever again.